Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining today Korean Studies Seminar Series. Today we have a special guest from South Korea, Dr. Professor Myunghoon Kang from Myongji University in Seoul. And as we announced earlier, today's seminar is about the president election, which was recently done in South Korea. And Dr. Kang is kindly agreed to give his talk about the election outcome and its implications as today's title indicates. So before we welcome Dr. Kang, let me quickly give some administrative issues. So please turn off your microphone during the presentation. I told Dr. Kang it's up to Dr. Kang how to proceed the following the rest of the session today. But if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can leave your questions on the chat. Then he will be able to see those questions and address it. And also, please turn on your camera when you're speaking to or when you're listening to the presentation so that he can see who are in the room. So as we all know, it is very frustrating talking to the dark black screens. So as a courtesy, please show your respect to show your faces on the Zoom for a few minutes. And also for your information, this presentation is going to be recorded and will be shared on the Korean Studies Center YouTube channel. So please, you can come back and watch it again later if you want to. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce to our today's speaker, Dr. Kang Myunghoon. Well, as I said earlier, he's a professor of political science at Myongji University, Seoul, South Korea. He specializes political analysis, especially on policy issues, political behavior, using game theory models. So today he will give us talk about the election results of South Korea's 20th presidential election. And what it means to to Korea, and will kindly introduce us to the politics of South Korea for those who are not familiar with. So Dr. Kang, welcome, and thank you for giving the presentation today. So you can, the floor is yours now. You can start sharing your screen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone, and thank you especially to Professor Ko and Professor Park for having me here. And I'm so excited to share my kind of comments and my insight about this university done presidential election with you. So before I begin, let me share the screen with you. Okay, so can you see the screen, all of you? Okay. That's good. So again, my name is Myunghoon Kang and I'm working at Myongji University. And I'm so excited to have a chance to share my thought about the presidential election with you. So I know most of you may not understand what this Korean means, right? But I guess at least there is something you can guess from this picture. Probably because I'm talking about the presidential election, probably these two guys are the candidate, right? And these numbers actually means who won and who lost, right? So maybe you can see the winner on the right side here, and this is the loser because the number is bigger. This number is bigger than this one, right? I'm sorry, I tried to use the spotlight function. Yeah, there you go. So this number is larger than this number. So we actually know that even you don't know about anything about the Korean politics and you don't have any knowledge about the Korean alphabet, but you know that this guy is the winner and this guy is the loser based on the numbers. And if you have that kind of guessing, you're right. Then I'm not gonna talking about something very obvious, something like, hey, this guy's won and this guy's lost, and that's all. And so he's happy and he's not happy. That's not interesting. But I really want to talk about these four topics about this presidential election. The first point is the outside of politics, and the second one is some question like who votes for whom. And the third one is this is very typical Korean thing in presidential election, which is called candidate unification. And the last one is another question as will there be a honeymoon right after the inauguration of the new president-elect? Okay, so let me go further. So before we get jumping the details of the presidential election, let me talk about some backgrounds. So first, I want to talk about some institutional backgrounds about the presidential election of South Korea. The rule is very simple. The rule is simple plurality, or it is called first past the post. That means whoever gains the largest vote share of the voter will win the election. But you don't need actual absolute majority. The only matter is just who got the largest vote share. So for example, you got the 2% of the vote, but if the other candidates get just 1% for each, then you are the winner. It doesn't matter whether you didn't exceed the absolute majority or not. Does it make sense for you? So this is something like the horse race. That's why we call this is kind of first past the post. Who has the post the first win the election? Okay, another background, some kind of institutional background is the following, that there are two major relevant political parties in South Korea, and actually this is debatable, but I think there are also two minor relevant parties according to the Sartori's typology. In other words, there are two big parties and there are two small parties in South Korea. So the two big parties are the following: Democratic Party of Korea, DPK, and People Power Party, PPP. And the two small parties are Justice Party, JP, and People Party, PP. And I know knowing only the name does not help you. So I will give you some information about their ideological position. So you can see this picture in the slides. So you can think of a some one-dimensional spectrum like this, and on the right-hand side, you go to the right, then you are being more conservative, and you go to the left, then you are becoming more liberal. Then we can say, actually, the first big party, DPK, might be located at somewhere here. A little bit liberal, not that conservative, but not too much liberal. But the other big party, PPP, is conservative compared to the other parties. And then you can see the other positions of two small parties, JP and PP, like here. JP is most liberal party, and PP is between DPK, and PPP. Okay, this is kind of the basic structure of the political party system in South Korea, for the especially for the presidential election this year. Okay, so if you have any questions, and just stop me and ask me a question, then I will help. I try to my best to answer the question because I know, this is Korean politics, so it's a lot to digest. There's a lot of things to digest, so I know this is not easy. So if you have any trouble to understand what I'm talking about, then just stop me and ask me a question, please. All right. Okay, so before we jump to the 20th presidential election, I think we need to talk about the context of the current administration, Moon Jae-in administration, which was elected in the last presidential election, which is 19th, was held in 2017. And this was kind of unusual presidential election because this presidential election was started by some big event in South Korea, which is impeachment of the former president Park Geun-hye, this woman. The 18th president Park Geun-hye was impeached by some scandal and usurpation of power. So we had to elect new president, and the Korean people select Moon Jae-in as the 19th president of South Korea. But in this period, actually, there are a lot of things happen which affect actually the 20th presidential election of South Korea. So let me talk about these things later. So let's talk about the first point, which is outside of politics. So you can see two candidates. This guy on the left-hand side, whose name is Lee Jae-myung, was the candidate of DPK. DPK is the incumbent party. And this guy on the right-hand side, whose name is Yunzagio, is the candidate, presidential candidate from PPP, which is the largest opposition party in South Korea. And it's very interesting to see that actually these two guys are actually kind of outsider. That means they are not established politicians, or at least they are not kind of insider of each party. They are kind of outsider of their own party. But something happened and they became the presidential candidate, and Yunzagio has been elected as the new president. Then what happened? Why not insider but outsider got the power? That's the one question I want to address today. So let's talk about Lee Jae-myung a little bit in detail. Yeah, actually he has some political experiences as their city mayor and governor of the biggest province of South Korea, which is Gyeonggi province. But you can see that his political experiences only limited to the executive branch. He never been a kind of congressman. He never worked at the legislature. His all political knowledge and experience comes from his experience as a chief in the executive branch of local government. So this is very important because, even if we call that everybody's policy, if they are working in the government and they are elected, but the nature of their business are totally different. If you work in the legislature, then you have to always try to make some compromise and negotiation with your colleagues. But in the executive, it's something like you have a firm power and you have a strong leadership. So of course, you also have to make some compromise and negotiation, but the pressure is not that higher. It's not as high as the pressure that the congressman face because you're working in the executive branch. You order, then bureaucrats do something for you. At the same time, Lee Jae-myung was considered as kind of outsider in his own party, DPK. And most notably, he is frequently accused of being a populist. And actually, he admitted. So you can see the quote here. I'm sorry, how can I? Yeah, okay. I'm a populist. My policies, what they call populist policy, has been successful so far. So I will keep pursuing populist policy. This is what he said in some interview. I don't know. Actually, I cannot say for sure that he's a populist or not, but at least it was kind of big issue during the campaign that he is a populist. And many conservative media attack him and accuse him of being populist. Okay, so now we understand who Lee Jae-myung is. And let's move on to another candidate, Yunzagio. It is very funny that he is not a politician until 2021. Actually, he was a career prosecutor. So kind of he was a bureaucrat. He never worked in the area of politics. And actually, he was demoted during Park administration. And the Park is not purpose Park in this room, but the Park is her. During her administration, actually Yunzagio tried to investigate someone who is closely related to the administration, the President Park. That's why he was demoted. But after the impeachment, he's kind of resurrected that he was called up for investigating Park Geun-hye in 2016, and moreover, he was promoted to the highest position of the prosecutor's office, which is Prosecutor General. So he became the Prosecutor General in 2019. That means actually the president was at the time, and actually he's still our president in South Korea as well, but the President Moon actually thinks that Yoon Suk-yeol is very loyal to the administration. So the President Moon asked him to feel free to investigate even the president himself or the DPK, the Democratic Party of Korea, which is a ruling party, or the government if there seems to be some corruption. Okay, sounds good. That's the way to go, actually. But what really happened is that actually Yoon Suk-yeol began to investigate the administration, actually. So he actually did what he are ordered to do. So Yoon Suk-yeol actually investigated the Moon administration in 2019, which is some scandal about some guys very close to the administration. But what happened is that, I don't know, it's something like the Moon and the guys at the administration was very angry that that guy betrayed us. And so at the time, the Minister of the Justice tried to stop him. Hey, stop investigating. But Yoon didn't listen to the boss, didn't listen to the Minister of the Justice. Yoon just kind of rebelled against the Minister of the Justice. As a result, he was suspended in 2020. Even he was he couldn't do anything because all his work was kind of stopped by the order of the Minister of Justice. So as a result, he resigned from the position in 2021, and he ran for the presidential election. He joined PPP, and now he became the politician without any experience before. But anyway, he joined the party and he became the candidate. So what I'm trying to say here is that actually he is purely outsider, or he is amateur. He's never been a politician before. This year is 2022, right? But in 2021, right about this time, he was not a politician. He never experienced any significant political positions before. So we can say he is an outsider. So some of you might wonder what this picture means, and I will try to explain this picture. So this woman here is the Minister of the Justice in 2020, and he's the Yoon, is Yoon. So she kind of scolded him. Hey, don't do that. Do not investigate us. Stop everything. And actually, you know what? What is really interesting and funny is that this picture actually was shared by herself on her social media account. But that's what happened actually, figuratively speaking. Okay, so now we know that Yoon is also outsider. So what's the matter then? Is there something wrong that outsiders run for the election? Okay. Yeah, am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry. Can you hear me well without echo?
I can hear you.
I just don't understand. Is he like? Can we compare him to the Trump, who's being a businessman, and is it like the same as the two major candidates, Lee Jae-myung from DPK and Yunzagio from PVP?
Okay, that's a good question, actually. Actually, it's quite difficult to say that Lee Jae-myung is that kind of outsider like the Trump, because he has some kind of political career in the executive, but he doesn't have any experience in the legislature. And all his experience is just about the executive. That means he's not kind of the typical politician who tries to make a compromise and negotiation. Does it make sense? And Yunzagio might be more closer to Trump in that sense, because Yunzagio does not have any political career before he gets elected as the president. So it's kind of big jump, right? Okay, then what's the matter?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. What's the matter? Some scholars argued that, outside the politics is a kind of the sign that there are a lot of distrust in conventional politics. In other words, people do not trust in the conventional way of the politics that the policy will solve the problem. Actually, people think that politics make the problems. then the people try to look for another new and fresh figure who can solve all the problems. That is outsider. So as Ms. Yajat point out, actually many people in the US, even in the US, many people thought that Trump will be a new and fresh figure because Trump does not have any connection with the politics before. He's a new guy. He's not kind of the typical politician. I guess same thing goes to South Korea as well. Probably many Korean people think that Yoon will be different. He's not a politician, but he showed some courage to show down with their current president. Then maybe people think that that's the guy who can solve the problem. That's the guy new and fresh. That's the guy who doesn't have any connection with the corrupt politician. And usually the outsider emphasize that they're the representative of the people. That means they have the direct link with the people. So they usually try to bypass all the established political institutions. They always try to go directly to the people. And they argue that they have the mandate from the people. Then what happened? Because you have the people's mandate, you don't need to make a compromise. You don't need to make a negotiation because you are the people. You are the representative of the people. You are the only guy, only one who has the people's mandate. So you are always right. You're always correct. You're always legitimate. So they do not try to make the compromise negotiation. Then what happens? Confrontation. Hey, if you don't listen to me, then you are against the will of the people because I'm the people. If you're against me, then you are against the people. You are the enemy. So actually, I'm quite worried with this kind of pathological phenomenon. I'm not worried about who won and who lost, but I'm really worried about the fact that both major parties candidates are kind of outsiders. And this is kind of consistent with the global trend of the democracy. And that's something I really worried about. Let's think about the France. Now there is a presidential election is going on in France, right? Who's the candidate? Marine Le Pen, with the extreme right wing, with kind of outsider extremist. We already saw some rise of the outsider in the US as well, like a Trump. And I guess you can understand that kind of trend also at least emerged in South Korea through this 20th presidential election as well. That's the first point I want to make. Any questions so far? Good. All right, then the second point, who votes for whom? Again, I know you don't have any knowledge about Korean alphabet, but at least you know that, well, maybe this red means that the region vote for the PPP, Mr. Yoon, and the blue region means that the region voted for Lee Jae-myung, DPK. And you're right. It's kind of divided, right? This is quite typical. Actually, many Korean people and Korean political scientists saw the kind of the trend that weakening this kind of division in the election. But so we thought that, well, maybe this might not be a problem in the near future. But this trend kind of raised again. More interestingly, if we see the more cross-sectional data of the exit poll for the presidential election, there are very interesting things to see. First, you can see that surprisingly, many young people vote for PPP, which is conservative party, because it is against our conventional understanding that young people prefers liberal to conservative. What happens? But the kind of middle-aged people, like 40s in their 40s and 50s, they support and they vote for liberal. It's kind of reversed. What happened? So we can think about some kind of age effect first. By age effect, I mean, like I said just right before, as you get older and older, then you're more inclined to the conservative party. If you're young, you're a big fan of the Liberal Party, but if you're old, then you are becoming a fan of conservative party. That's the kind of conventional understanding of age effect. But as you can see here, this curvilinear kind of shape, it doesn't work. Then what happened? That is, in my opinion, is generation effect. So there are some particular and specific generation, which is called 586 generation in South Korea. Here, 5 means in their 50s, 8 means they entered the university during the 80s, and 6 means they are born in 1960s. Okay? And actually, they are the main driver of the democratization in South Korea. So very locally speaking, they kind of made some alliance with the Liberal Party in South Korea. Moreover, they are kind of beneficiary of the rapid economic development of South Korea. So kind of, yeah, it might be wrong, but locally speaking, they are the richest generation right now in South Korea. But what happened to the young? One reason is this one: skyrocketing housing price in South Korea. In other words, unequal wealth distribution is bigger and bigger among young generation. So let's look at this diagram. Before 2017, the average price for the apartment in South Korea is not that high, or still expensive, but it's not that crazy high. It's roughly about 420,000 US dollars, or something like that. But after Moon Jae-in got the position, got the power, something happened, and now the average price per apartment in Seoul is about 1 million US dollars. 1 million. I'm not so sure if I can make the money during whole my life. So let's think about the 20s, young people. They gave up. Wow, 1 million? I cannot make them money. Right? They're angry. We didn't do anything wrong, but now I cannot buy a house, even a house in Seoul. Right? But there's another very interesting point we want to see. Look at the 20s. More than half of the 20s male vote for the PPP, Mr. Yoon, but more than half of the female actually vote for Mr. Lee, DPK. Why? There might be some gender effect as well. And actually, gender conflict or gender equality is kind of also very important new social cleavage in South Korea recently. And Mr. Yoon actually posted very provocative posts in Facebook, like abolishing the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. Actually, I said gender equality in English, but this Korean means that female Ministry of Female and Family. And this is what he posted on his Facebook. I'm gonna abolish it. So I see there are a lot of female students here. What do you feel? Do you want to vote for him? Surely not, probably. Right? Actually, I have many female students in my class in South Korea. When I talk about the presidential election, then I can see the change of the facial expression of the female students. I can understand that. So this is the second point I really wanted to make here. Now we have something like the conservative, young and old, while we have liberal, middle age. And this is what drove the result of 20th presidential election in South Korea. Okay. And I see some chat. Okay. Oh, there are some very interesting questions on the chat. So maybe I can finish the talk and we can talk about these questions as well. All right. And the third point I want to make today is the candidate unification. So I already told that there are two major parties and two minor parties in South Korea. And actually, this candidate unification is very typical Korean phenomenon during the presidential election. For example, in 1997, the former president Kim Dae-jung won with the alliance with the Kim Jong-pil. And Kim Jong-pil was the leader of another minor party at the time. In 2002, the former president Roh Moo-hyun made an alliance with the Jung Mong-jun, although Jung Mong-jun broke the alliance late night before the election, but that's what happened, and Roh Moo-hyun won. And this presidential election, actually, Mr. Yunzagio from PPP actually unified or make an alliance with the An Chol-soo, who was the leader of the People Party, this one, PP. This one. So another candidate from the minority party, Shim Sang-jung from JP, actually finished the race. Then why do we see this kind of candidate unification in South Korea very frequently? Here's the answer. The rule, as I told earlier, the rule for the presidential election is what? Simple plurality. And this simple plurality actually leads to both strategic voting. So let me explain a little more in detail with some strong assumption like this. So a week before the presidential election, the approval rating survey is like the following. Lee actually lead the race, and then Yoon, and then An and Shim like this. Very close, right? 45 and 44.9% of the approval rating. So let's just assume, based on these ideological positions, let's assume that those who vote for the approved Lee preferences like this. Lee, the first choice is Lee, and the second choice is An, and third choice is Yoon. And those who are approved Yoon, which comprise of 44.9%, the preferences is Yoon and Lee. And those who approve An, the preferences is An, Yoon, Lee. Then what's the kind of strategic voting? Let's think about these guys. Your first choice is An, and the second choice is Yoon. But I know An never win. Then I hate who? Lee. Then it might be better vote for Yoon. Then Yoon gonna win because 44.9 plus 5.1 is what? More than 50%. Oh, just 50%. Miracle. That is the strategic voting. Right? So because of this simple plurality institution, there's some mismatch with the Lu and 2 plus alpha party system in South Korea, and that always leads to strategic voting of the voters. Then what's the implication? Well, I cannot say whether this kind of candidate unification always make the winner for sure or not. For example, I'm not so sure whether the unification of making an alliance with the An and Yu actually is the big reason why Yoon was elected as the president. I'm not so sure. But one thing I can say for sure is that at least with these voting rules, with this electoral institution, always two-party system will be consolidated. That means the candidate from the minor parties is always damaged by the institution. Moreover, many people already know this. Many Korean people know these features of the electoral institution. So actually, I saw a lot of newspaper reporting that a lot of supporters of the Mr. Lee who lost to the Yoon actually criticized the candidate Shim. Why? Look at this table again. The election was so close. Just the difference is just 0.6 something, 0.76, right? 73. But assuming the preferences like this, if Shim gave up during the election, then probably Lee might win. Because those who vote for the Shim now will vote for the Lee if there's no option for Shim in the election. That's why many supporters of the Mr. Lee criticized and even damned candidate Shim and JP. And this kind of mentality or mental logic actually will reinforce the tendency to consolidate two-party system. Why? It kind of vilify Sim or the candidate from the minor party. You cannot be a president, but you, because of you, we lost. So it's your fault. That's the logic. And finally, I see there's not many time left, so let me move quickly. Will there be a honeymoon after the election? Usually, people think that there might be some honeymoon period in which actually opposition party try to cooperate with the new elect president, new government. But unfortunately, now Mr. Yoon has a divided government. That means the legislature actually is controlled by will be controlled by the opposition party. So DKP will be opposition party, but DKP has more than half of the total seat in the legislature. And moreover, DKP actually does not have any reason to cooperate with Mr. Yoon. Why? The election was so close, just 0.73. The difference is just 0.73. That means what? It's quite difficult for Mr. Yoon to claim the mandate from the people. Some people will argue that this is just a luck. Moreover, the DKP thinks that still, we lost the campaign, we lost the election, but still, the election was so close, which means we still have a lot of supporters backward in our side. So we are so strong. Although we lost the position, the most powerful position in the country, but we are so strong and we have a lot of supporters. So why not? We can confront. We can fight against the new president. So probably against the conventional wisdom, my guess is that there will be no honeymoon period. That means, a lot of probably chaos, political chaos for the new administration, unfortunately. So that is the kind of the point we want to watch, whether the new president and the new administration will solve that kind of problem or not. And one thing that will give hint us is the upcoming nationwide local elections in South Korea. That means whether this close election was just a luck or some meaning, or whether people give some mandate to either DKP or PPP through the local elections. All right, so that's all. And thank you for paying attention to my presentation. And I'm happy to take any question from you. So, Aidana?
Yes, hello. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I want to ask how these two people who are like outsiders became an president, how they come to this race. I'm interested in this question.
I'm sorry. So can you say that the question again, please?
So how do these president elections, right? These two presidents that were going there racing came here as they were outsiders. Like how does the process of electing president goes there in South Korea?
Okay,
that's
yeah, that's simple. So you're talking about the electoral institution, and it's very simple. Just people go to the ballot box and make just throw just one vote for your most preferred candidate, and we just got all the ballots and count, and those who got the most ballot from the people will be the president. So that's the simple plurality. So you don't need to take the absolute majority. Does it make sense? So 2 votes is enough if the other candidate get just 1 vote. That's the simple plurality. Okay, did I answer your questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
Aisha? Oh, there are 2 Aishas. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let's start. Professor Kang, thank you for your very inspireful and interesting presentation. And I have a question. So thanks to your presentation, we could know a little bit about the electoral system of the Korean. And how do you think, what are the main drawbacks of this system?
Well, that's very deep question, actually, but it's some question, something like a chicken first or egg first. But I would say probably, I mean, in the book, actually, kind of social and cultural context makes them choose the rule first. Like if there's just one social cleavage, then you might have some two-party system. Then the two parties will choose a simple plurality rule or absentee because that is beneficial to the two-party system to maintain their system, something like that. But in South Korea, I'm not so sure. But because we have the authoritarian period as well, so I don't think that the social context matters a lot, affects a lot. I don't know, but probably one thing that I admit is that we try to kind of imitate the most advanced electoral institution of the world, like the US and Britain or UK, as our system. I don't know. But one thing I can say for sure is that at least now we have the two-party system with the plurality rule, and there is less incentive to change the rule because it is already beneficial to the existing two major parties. That's something I can say for sure to you. I'm sorry. Okay,
Thank you.
and yeah, you're welcome.
And one more question, like,
Okay.
do you personally support that some outsider politicians have those politicians from other spheres have an opportunity to participate in the elections?
Well, well, so you mean you asked me that whether I'm support the outsider or not, right?
Yes.
Well, personally, I think that I don't like the idea that outsider will join the politics because, as I talk in the slides, but this is personal opinion, but because as I talk in the slides, they try to always, claim that they have the mandate from the people, and they always try to bypass the political institution or political other kind of established way to solve the problem or address the problems. But that's my personal taste. But well, if people like it, then yeah, it works actually in reality. But still, I should say that is not always better good because it has that kind of problems, and that will ultimately, raise the kind of anti-politics sentiment among the people, or it could also can be a kind of the big sign of degrading to the authoritarian regime from democracy. That's something that in my mind. Okay.
Okay, I
Right.
see. Thanks.
Okay. So and Timur and another Aisha. Okay. So Timur, go first.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. And my question is, why did the younger generation of South Korea vote for the right wing? Could it be possibly because the right wing puts more emphasis on the unemployment rate among the younger generations? Because I've heard this is a big problem there.
Yeah, that might be the one reason, I guess. But I guess more fundamentally, maybe young people is kind of disillusioned with so-called 586 generation and the 586 and 586 generation is kind of big supporting grounds for the DPK, the ruling party right now. So to me, it looks like younger generation kind of feel they think they are stolen. They are stolen something. Something like, if they were born like 20 years earlier, then they could enjoy all the kind of economic benefit from the rapid economic development in South Korea. But They're not. Even they put more energy, even they put more effort compared to those generation, right? But the outcome that they can get is absolutely smaller than the older generation. I guess they just kind of make them to think that they're stolen, they're locked. A lot of energy and less rewards. So they're angry. Or maybe they will give up the hope. What's the point of working hard? Because I cannot even buy a house, buy an apartment in Seoul because I have to pay million US dollars. That's probably why they try to look for new people, fresh people, which is outsider, I guess. Aisha?
Yes, thank you, Professor Kang, for your presentation insights. So I have a question about, for example, the idea of self-branding. In the US politics, for example, self-branding is very important, usually during elections. And from what I understand today, does it mean that self-branding is also important for Korean politics in Korean elections?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the self-branding is very important because actually, if you look at the details of the policy platform from each party, then you will be surprised that because there's not much differences in terms of social economic policies, especially. Then what is the more important things for the borders? Brand, image, I guess. That's why something, for example, Yunzagio posts this very provocative message in his Facebook and send a kind of image to the borders that, hey, 20s, hey, male 20s, I'm your friend. I'm the only one who is in your side, something like that. So yeah, I think you're right. The brand imaging is very important. Okay, Yajat, I'm sorry. Yeah, if I'm not correct.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question also similar to Timur's question about young males voting for the Conservative Party. Do the Conservative Party offer the regulation of the prices on the household in the current economic situation? Or why do they vote for them? What's the reason?
Oh, actually, that's kind of opposite to my understanding. And actually, the current administration, the DPK government, imposed a lot of regulation on the housing, and because of the supply and demand law of the supply and demand, they already put some regulation on the supply. Then what happens? Short of supplies, then it drives the housing upsurge of the housing price in South Korea. So probably actually the PPP argued that, hey, we are conservative, we are more market friendly, so we're gonna get rid of all the regulation on housing market. Then they argue that in this way, we can fix the problem. We can make the price normal again. But so far, it looks like it doesn't work. Yeah. But anyway, that's their plan. They try to get rid of the regulation imposed on the housing market.
Okay, thank you. But also one more question is about self-branding. So they wanted to young males to vote for them, the Conservative Party, but how to say, does it work just because the Korean society maybe is more conservative in terms of feminism, or does it work because this Conservative Party offers the special benefits only for male group?
Well, I guess the reason why the PPP use this the gender cleavage as a kind of their strategy for the election is probably they think the male 20s young voter would be much more easier to mobilize compared to the female voters. But I'm not talking about this is true. It's their calculation. And actually, the DPK actually tried to mobilize female voters as well as a kind of antithesis against the PPP. So, well, probably this is why, they try to kind of get their own portion of the 20s in their side. Probably this is kind of equilibrium. I don't know, but yeah. But one thing for sure is that ideologically PPP is more friendly to the kind of some kind of anti, affirmative action or anti, feminist policy because conservatism means what they're more trying to prepare some conservative and traditional values compared to the river, right? I guess that might be the region.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. And Dmitry, right? Oh,
Yeah, but I think Ayajan was first.
okay. So Ayajan, I'm sorry, I wrote you. Yeah. Ayajan? I cannot hear you, by the way. Oh. Probably connection glitch.
Thank you for
Mhm.
your presentation. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well? Then can I my question?
Yeah, I can hear you, so go ahead, but the connection is not good right now. Oh, okay. I can see you, and maybe I can hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. Then Dmitry.
Okay, I want to thank you personally for this presentation, and I can see that Ankara experienced rise of populism from the Democratic Party, from PPP, and I want to know your opinion. Is it seasonal due to world economic crisis, coronavirus, and etc., or Korea need to have some changes in democratic system to avoid such problem in the future? What is the key reason of rise of populism?
Well, yeah, that's actually a really good question, but I don't think that this is because of the coronavirus. I guess there is kind of some trend toward the populism in embedding the democracy, especially when the performance, something like the economic performance, is not that good, or at the same time, the globalization also kind of boosts the trend toward the populism as well, because now we are living in the kind of world where there's stark differences between the winner and loser in the society, in the same society. So if there's more and more losers, then actually it is very easier to mobilize them as your supporter, as your political resources. Then one very easy way to mobilize them, in my opinion, is what? Populism. It's something like you are ignored by the society, you are ignored by the politics. You are the losers. Nobody listens to you, but I'm here. I'm here with you. I can be a representative of you, right? So I guess, yeah, it's not about probably some parts of the region might be from coronavirus pandemic or something like that. But I guess the more big region is something like kind of the unequal wealth distribution accumulated throughout the history, especially throughout from the 90s in South Korea, and the effect of the globalization as well. So that actually makes us stark winner and loser. And now there's some room for some ambitious guy to use the populism to get the power. And everything is right because now people existing state-established policy does not work, then who will fix this problem? Maybe outsiders. I don't know, but that's my kind of theory right now. Did I answer your question?
Yep, we will hope that outsiders will help with democracy.
Okay. Okay, Aya-chan?
I wrote my question. Can you hear me now? Well, I'm sorry. No. I read the article on the Diplomat, the newspaper, and there was mentioned that the President Yoon's attempt to dissolve that Ministry of 여성 가족부 PG.
Yeah, right.
And that there was mentioned that in order to do so, the administration of President Yoon should receive an approval from the National Assembly. And in that article, it was mentioned that the National Assembly is mostly controlled by the Democratic Party, which was the rival of the President Yoon. And like, do you think that it's possible to, like, the dissolvement of that ministry is possible, and like the oppositional attempts from the society, like I think like the feminist movements are already against to that the dissolvement of that ministry. Is like their attempt enough to stop the process?
Well, yeah, I think it will be very difficult, but the thing is that there's a lot of way actually make the ministry ineffective. Yeah, actually, the abolishing the ministry is the kind of the outright way to keep his promise, right? But there's another way. Actually, you can appoint someone very incompetent or someone that does not have any willingness to work with the bureaucrat in the ministry, right? Or maybe another way is something like you just cut the funding, right? So the question here is not whether he's really gonna abolish the ministry or not. The real question is why he used the message, the provocative message during the campaign. Even if he knows that it will be very difficult to abolish the ministry. And one reason might be to mobilize the 20 million. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome. Any questions? Okay. I think I'm done. Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Kang. Well, also thank you for today's attendees. It was pretty active and productive question and discussion sessions. So everyone, please join me applause Dr. Kang for today's presentation. And this ends today's session. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.